Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm doing another tutorial with the inspiration of these daisies that I bought for my mother for Mother's Day, and I need a card to go along with them, so of course I'm going to make her a card. And I haven't made a card on my YouTube channel in quite a while, since Christmas really, and so I've missed a lot of other opportunities to make cards, which is something that I find really fun. But also, sometimes it's hard to come up with ideas for cards. And so these daisies were just kind of a nice springboard for me to come up with an interesting idea. Originally, I thought, I would just do a card showing the daisies and maybe stylize them a little bit, but then I came up with an idea, which you will see here. I'm going to sketch that out on a piece of scrap paper, and I will turn this into a template. The sketch that I do here is really, really rough, so the template that I give to you guys is going to be a lot better than this sketch. I'll base the final template off of the actual finalized card rather than this sketch, and the template's going to be available for free, and this is one of those that will just always be available for free, and so it'll only be on my Gumroad page because Etsy doesn't allow me to post things that are free. So check out the link below to get this cute little template. You might have to make a few changes to the mom here. So I drew this to kind of represent my mom. She has wavy hair, and so you might have to adjust things like the hairstyle, the skin color, whatever. Make it your own. Should be pretty easy to adjust it. It's a very simple little figure. And then I have her carrying basically these daisies that I got her, and I made them huge, and I want the card to say, "We love you this much." And since there's two daisies, it represents just me and my daughter. That's our little family. And I thought, this is a really cute idea, and I like how it turned out. So the tutorial here is going to go pretty fast, but it's actually a fairly simple and straightforward set of techniques that I'll be using. I am going in with some waterproof colored India ink here. This is by Dr. Martens, and I love this ink so much. This is like a magenta or fuchsia color, and I've been really enjoying using this ink rather than black because I feel like it just seems a little, I don't know how to say it, less cartoonish or something. I don't know, less coloring book-ish if you just don't use black ink. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I really like this ink. And again, it's waterproof, so I don't have to worry about when I go over it with watercolor, I don't have to worry about smudging it. Another idea would be just to use watercolor on the flowers and maybe leave the person just outlined instead of coloring the person in if you don't want to go into like small details. I think that would also look really cute, but I went ahead and did the full thing in color here. So I'm going to start out doing a lot of wet into wet in the flowers. So I'm going over this whole area with just some clear water just to wetten this up. And then I'm going to lay down a base of yellow because whether we're looking at those daisies or the leaves, there's kind of a consistent yellow to all of them. Basically, for the daisies, I'll go in with some reds to brighten that up. And then with the leaves, obviously, I can go in with a little bit of blue and green. But ultimately, everything has a nice yellow undertone to it. And I want to keep this very, very wet, very soft. I want to kind of let the colors bleed out into the card and not have a very hard boundary. Now I'm going in with just a little bit of very watery red while everything is very wet, and laying in some of the coloration that I can see in the daisies, adding a little bit more intensity still while everything's very wet, letting everything fuzz together and be very soft. Now I'm going to move on to my smaller brush, get some more yellow. So this is phthalo blue. The yellow I'm using is Hansi yellow. And this makes a really nice bright green. So I'm just adding some splashes of green here and there. I want to let some of the yellow still kind of poke through. And I also want to vary the greens. So I'm adding a little bit more yellow here and there. I'll end up adding a little bit more blue just so we get some variations. And I'm not thinking about like the individual leaves or anything like that. I just basically want to lay in some wet into wet variations of green in here, and I'm not going to worry about the leaves at all. I will a little bit later when I go back in with ink after everything is completely dry, but for now I just want lots of variation. So I'm not concerned at all about individual leaves. And letting it all just kind of bleed together. The edges on the leaves are a little bit harder than what I want on the flowers. Now I'm going in with Payne's Gray and my red, that's just Purell Red, to lightly place in the center of the daisies. I don't want that to be too dark. And now I'm going in with more intense red on the area of the daisies that is very, very nice and bright, letting some of those paler yellows show through a little bit. And now I'm going in with more intense yellow just to brighten up all those yellows. Again, still allowing some of those paler yellows to show through, and I'm still trying to keep everything very soft, very loose, very organic. And now I'll just go ahead and put in some of the base layers for the mom. So for her skin, I'm just using my yellow and red, so it's just kind of a nice light peach. I'll have to give her more of a tan later because my mom loves to have a tan. And I'm going to keep her clothing very simple, just like a red shirt and blue jean shorts. And clothing is something else that you might want to modify just according to your mom's way of dressing. You know, maybe your mom likes to wear dresses or, you know, whatever. Maybe she has a special t-shirt that you can somehow incorporate into this to make it a little bit more personal for your mom. But I'm keeping it very simple. It's just kind of a rough representation of her. She likes to wear shorts. My mom kind of has brown hair, so I'm just using that Payne's Gray and Purell Red to put in her hair color. I know that's not really like a brown, but I'm not too concerned, of course, with being super accurate. This isn't exactly a realistic portrait, but just meant to be very cute and casual. And I'm letting the flowers dry a little bit and also the leaves, because what I'm going to do to kind of finalize those, right now they're kind of a mess, I guess, of just wet into wet watercolor, but it's all going to come together really nicely because I'm going to go over that with more ink a little bit later. And the reason that I didn't go into the flower area with ink to begin with is because my tendency is to kind of overdo it with the ink. If I start out that way, I'll just end up like outlining everything and drawing way too many details, and I really wanted this to be very kind of simple and whimsical and sweet. So I thought it would be helpful just to do all of the colors first, let that be very, very loose, let things just kind of merge together whatever way happens, and then I can go in with some ink, and that's really going to help pull everything together and make it look really, really nice. Also, with the lettering, you can see that my template that I made for myself is wider than my watercolor paper, so I am going to have to adjust the lettering. And I'm definitely not a calligraphy person, so don't come here for calligraphy. I'm just kind of winging it. Sometimes I will actually print fonts off of my computer and then use those as a template for cards, but this time I decided just to do my own handwriting, of course, because, you know, it's my mom. So I'm going to put the "We love you" part up at the top, and then down here where we have a little bit of negative space, I'll put the "this much" in all caps, and I think that that actually looks a lot nicer. The original template looks a little bit off balance just because everything, like the big massive flowers, is so far over to the left, and then there's a lot of negative space over on the right. So, you know, sometimes things just work out. I'm going over the "We love you" in this ink once again, and what I'll end up doing is actually watering down that ink and using a brush just to lightly go over it with a little bit more of that magenta color, and it ends up looking really nice, I think. And I have to really be careful to let the ink dry, because since I'm putting it on this very absorbent cotton paper, it does take a little bit longer to dry, and it's coming off of my pen a little bit thicker than I'm used to when I use cheaper, more synthetic papers. It doesn't like soak up the ink so much. So let's let that all dry and just be careful not to rub our hands into it and smudge it. I'm going to go ahead in and start on the daisies. So this is kind of the fun part that I think really helps to bring this whole thing together. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of looking over at the daisies and kind of noticing the pattern of the way that the petals are on the flower. So they start out in the center being a little bit shorter and smaller. And then as you move to the outer petals of the daisies, the petals get just a little bit bigger and longer. So that's basically all that I need to do to give the impression of these daisies and have it look really nice and whimsical and not overly detailed. So the template that I'm going to make for you guys will actually have all of the petals drawn on, and it's up to you if you want to actually transfer those onto your own paper and then go over them with ink or whatever you choose to use. Or, you know, you can just use that as kind of a visual guide for yourself. There's obviously really, I don't think there's many ways to screw up these petals because they're pretty simple shape. I would say just, you know, keep them very loose. Don't worry about everything kind of like connecting or, you know, making tons of sense or being, you know, like a botanical illustration that's highly realistic. This is just for fun. So the template will include all of this, and you could even probably leave out some of the marks that I included and have it be even more simple. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the leaves. And the leaves are going to be even less outlined because right now this is just kind of a big jumble. And I basically just want to add in a few lines that indicate the separation of some of these leaves. And I really like the general shape of the leaves with these flowers. I think that they're so beautiful, the way that they're just kind of crinkled and folded and wavy. So I just wanted to kind of capture the essence of that, but overall the leaves are going to be very, very simple. I don't want to use too much ink in here also because going over these greens with this magenta ink makes that ink look really dark. It doesn't look bad, but it's just different. So I don't want to overdo it and have the leaves be overly dark because of that combination. So we'll keep those very, very simple. And I'm also going to do kind of a once over on the mom figure as well, just to kind of bring back some of the magentas in the outlines. And I left her face very simple. She just has like two little eyes and a smiling mouth and a tiny little nose. So if you don't have waterproof ink like this, then I would say don't do any outlining at all before you do your watercolor. Just save all of your inking for last, and then you can use any kind of ink you happen to have, even if it's just like a regular pen, because as long as you're going over dried watercolor with ink, then it doesn't matter if it's waterproof or not. Alright, so I'm almost done here. I just want to add a little bit of a nice pink halo to the lettering, because when I was looking at it, it just seemed a little bit, I don't know, too dark, and that paper had really soaked it up and it didn't even really feel pink. It felt almost like red. So what I'm doing is just I added a little bit of water to this little dot of ink on my ink palette over here, and using another brush, I'm just going over the lettering with this light wash of pink. So it kind of brightens it up and makes it also look a little bit softer. And to do this, it also doesn't matter if you're using ink that's waterproof or water soluble. You can mix water in with it and just kind of dilute it a little bit. And actually, if you know that the ink that you're using is water soluble, what you could do is kind of mark in the letters and then go over it with your watercolor brush and a little bit of water and allow it to actually kind of soften. And then once that's dry, you could then go back over it with the hard letters again. So you would kind of get the same effect without having to, you know, worry about whether your ink is waterproof or not. And then since I did this just on a tiny little sheet of 5x7 watercolor paper and not onto a folded piece of watercolor paper, I'm just going to glue this onto some colored cardstock that I had that just happens to look nice with this design. And so I folded the cardstock and cut it down to be just a little bit larger all around than the 5x7 watercolor paper. And all I have for glue is rubber cement, so that's what I'm using. I don't know if this is the best glue to use for this project, but that's really all I had. I hardly ever use glue, ever. So putting it on both sides of the sheet. This is how I remember my art teacher from school teaching us how to use rubber cement. Like, you're supposed to put it on both surfaces, and then you're actually supposed to let it air dry a little bit, probably much longer than what I just did. And then you stick them together, and it's like the friction, I guess, that holds them together. So that's how I learned it, and hopefully it works. Once I get this all finished, I'm going to just kind of sandwich it underneath some of my big art books, and hopefully it will stay. I'm really hoping it doesn't like fall apart when I give it to my mom. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this, and I hope that you'll use the free template to make your mom a special watercolor card. And I hope you have a great day, and if you're a mother, happy Mother's Day. Bye.